Hey, everybody. Just before this episode starts, I just want to let you know that we talk about some sensitive things, we talk about some heavy things. It's not like a typical episode that we usually have, so just letting you guys know about that. Also, I felt it a little inappropriate to take a ad break during this episode just because we talk about some heavy stuff, and I just didn't want to break the feng shui of it. I just wanted it to go and be natural and thorough. So we're going to put the ad at the beginning of the episode right after this announcement, and then you'll have the entire episode with uncut because I really enjoyed recording this episode. Another new thing, everybody, is that we have a Patreon, and with our first tier, you get a shout out thank you at the beginning of every episode. So thank you, Kevin Lagrange, our first and only patron. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now to the episode. This episode is sponsored by Brotherhood MFG. Brotherhood MFG is a clothing brand centered around car culture with a fresh style. And with Christmas just around the corner, what better time to purchase that special someone some cool car-inspired clothing? Brotherhood MFG has even given us a special discount code to give to you guys. So if you go to teespring.com/stores/brotherhoodmfg and use discount code PASTIME in all caps, you guys will get 13% off the entire store. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Pastime Thinker Podcast. I'm your host, Frederick Piquette, and today my guest is Keaton. How are you, man?
I'm doing well.
That's nice. So you also run a podcast as well, right?
I do. That is correct. It's called You Don't Fight Alone.
You Don't Fight Alone. What's that podcast about?
It is about sharing the stories of those of us successfully living with mental illness and how we got there.
How you got there. And what was the inspiration for that?
The inspiration for that is around my story. A decade ago, I was in the ICU by my own hand, so an intensive care unit.
Okay.
And that's when I found out that my family had a history of mental illness.
Oh.
So that point forward, it's been on my brain of how to break down that stigma, break down those barriers.
Yeah.
And the most effective way I've found to do that is sharing stories, sharing the experiences.
Mm-hmm. The highs and the lows, I assume.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's and I guess throughout that journey, you yourself have also gotten quite a bit of an education on it, I would assume.
I definitely have. I'm not a professional by any means. So there's always a disclaimer on my show and when I go places.
Mm-hmm.
But from a peer experience, and I did 7.5 years of weekly counseling and study on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned quite a bit about mental health and my diagnoses as well. But,
yeah. That's interesting. Like, I personally, as far as I know, at least, don't really have a tendency, or not a tendency, but I don't think I have any mental illnesses. But I'm definitely surrounded by people. Like, I definitely have relationships with people who do.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, all my experience with it is just through peer review, I guess.
Peer experience, yeah.
Yeah, like I've lost some friends, both literally and metaphorically, to substance abuse and mental illness, and that's basically my only experience with that side of things. How do you find people for your podcast? Is that like a volunteer basis, or do you go out and network?
So it's been networking and learning. So season 1 was just people I knew.
Yeah, that's where you got to start, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's where you start. People you know, talk to them, ask them. And with season 2, I did networking, posted on some local boards here saying, hey, I'm looking for guests.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I found most people. Few through networking and events and a few through posting on boards. Season 3, which we're working on scheduling guests and finding, people are reaching out to me to ask to be a guest.
That's exciting.
I'm like, oh, cool. People are hearing about this.
Yeah.
So I've got 4 people that way, and our seasons, at some point we hope to expand it, but right now a season is 10 episodes for us, is what we can get and do and be consistent with.
Yeah.
So
yeah, do you find yourself getting numb to it at all? Like, do you find yourself getting less empathetic as it goes? Do you find yourself getting more empathetic as it goes? Just based off like hearing what I would
Yeah.
assume to be similar stories in some cases.
Um, I was kind of concerned that I might become numb to it when I started the project out. But now that I've interviewed 19 people and I was guest number 20, um, I realized my empathy, at least right now, doesn't have bounds. So it's impactful every time.
Yeah.
Like I've been learning how to not take the trauma on myself.
Not
So
being
that's been a
too
growth.
empathetic. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so that's a growth area. Like, yes, empathize, cry with the person, or laugh with the person, be angry with the person, but don't take secondary offense. Don't be like, well, that person's parent did this or that person's partner did this. Let them own that.
Yeah. Like, don't try to insert yourself into the situation. You're saying
Exactly.
be like a
Don't try to insert myself, or don't try to just be like angry for that person.
yeah.
I think a great example is you might have a fight with somebody not related to mental illness at all,
Mm-hmm.
and you tell your friend about it. You make up with that person, and you guys are okay, but your friend is still
Your friend
angry.
is still angry at that person. Yeah, I've definitely, at least in like high school and stuff, I've been in a lot of situations like that. Like I'm very guilty of that. Like I'm very the type of person to like look at my friend and be like, "You're just gonna forget that they did that," and like kind of stir the pot a little bit. I'm definitely guilty of that. I've definitely done that.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing, and the growth for me is not taking it on, just being like, okay, thank you for sharing and
Yeah.
learning. So with our podcast, we give a full transcript to the person. It's just an auto transcribed piece.
Mm-hmm.
Anything they don't want in, we'll take out. And at any point during recording, we give them the option. Like, we will just pot down all the mics, so nothing's recording, and just talk or do whatever needs to happen
To get them into a comfortable
to make sure
state.
people are comfortable. And
Yeah.
like um, yeah, there was one guest, and they started crying, and then I started crying, and then my producer started crying, and we all just like potted down the mics and sat there for like 20 minutes crying and just kind of being present. And because sometimes life's heavy, right?
Absolutely. Do you find that getting difficult? Like intentionally situating yourself in a situation where you're just putting yourself in a state of sadness or anger, or do you find that like healing in a way?
For me, I think I find it healing. Um, and also, the way we structure the show is around success. So success is defined by the guest.
Yeah.
And because we structure it around that, like, we do go through the heavy pieces. So what it was rock bottom, why was it rock bottom?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes go into the past, sometimes not. Like, I've had guests where it's actually just current trauma. There was no trauma growing up. But putting myself there, and we do hear about the trauma, but at the end, we're talking about, what would you say to somebody who's going through this? What would you say to somebody who wants to understand what it's like to go through this?
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be resolution.
Well, that's always good to have. Is as long as they can talk about it, but knowing that they're not still in that place and that they've somehow bettered themselves from that place.
They're in a better headspace, yes.
Yeah.
And that's like, we had a guest come on, and she let us know when she was reaching out to us. She's like, I'm not going to come on and be the person who has it all together. And I was like, that's fine. Do you think you're living a successful life? And she's like, yes. I was like, okay, that's the definition. Success as defined by the guest. So getting to share, yes, we share in the trauma and we share the pain, but we also get to share the success, however they define that.
I've also noticed too that like talking about things helps people get over it. Like I have a friend who went through a trauma as a child, and they bring it up often, like not in a joking way, not in a sarcastic way. They bring it up often and they talk about it, and they talk about it very comfortably, and they talk about it often. And like one time I asked them, like, do you really think it's good to talk about it a lot like that? And like they told me that if they don't talk about it for so long, it ends up getting to them. And by bringing it up often and bringing attention to it and talking about it a lot, they feel better and they feel more comfortable talking about it every time. And the more comfortable they are talking about it, the more comfortable they are thinking about it.
Yep. The less power it has. So one of my diagnoses is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I did a type of counseling that was very effective called EMDR, which is eye movement rapid desensitization. It's really out there. When I was doing it, I was like, this isn't going to help. But they have a whole host of things that will stimulate the left side of your body and the right side of your body. And they find one that works for you that like you can actually tell it's happening. For me, it was 2 vibrating pads, one I'd put in my right hand, one in my left hand.
Okay.
And then going through that, this is an oversimplification, that then talk to you about your trauma. And what that does, kind of like what your friend's doing, they're more comfortable about it. What the EMDR does is it teaches your brain you're not there. You're not re-experiencing the trauma. You're not re-experiencing whatever that is you're thinking about.
Yeah.
You're in a safe space.
That was then, and you're here now. You're not there.
Yes. You're not, you don't need to run or fight. I've, in the middle of conversation, sprinted down 2 blocks away. And then I was like, how did I, like having to reconstruct how I got there. And it was like, oh, okay. That wasn't a right response because I wasn't in any danger, but my body was like, oh, it's happening again. So run. So yeah, that's where like EMDR, let's talk about it. You have the pads. It helps retrain your brain to separate this and now.
Yeah. Like I might not be using the proper terms, but like kind of dissociate in a healthy way. Like dissociate.
Them,
disconnect from it. Yeah. I knew I was saying the wrong word as soon as it came out of my mouth.
That's okay. No, that's, you know what? I don't mind people using the wrong words unless they're doing it to be hurtful. And yeah. I'm not a professional. You're not a professional. We're not going to use the right words. Even professionals occasionally mess it up. But yeah, that's like, being able to disconnect the two.
Yeah.
And going through the EMDR experience made me realize how much, the moment something triggered that memory, my body responded as if it was happening again. So
it's fight or flight, right?
Yeah. And my body was generally flight, but I also did tackle a guy. That went well. It actually did. Like, he was like, okay, Keaton, you done? Because he is a military police officer. So
there's a level of understanding.
And I won like the first quarter second to that fight. And I would have lost if he kept going. He put me in a lockout and just kind of held me there. It's like, okay, what happened?
Yeah.
Why'd you do that?
I've definitely been in situations like that. Like I have a sibling who has like some anger management issues, and I had a lot of size over him, and even though I was only a year older than him. But like I was put in a lot of situations where, he would enter a mind state and I had to hold him for a little bit until he calmed down.
Yeah.
Like I get it. Like doing that for somebody, like just let them get it out of their system, but make sure they're safe doing it.
Well, that was exactly it. Like, he took care of me. Like, he could have been like, oh, this guy tackled me. I'm going to win. Like, I'm going to beat him up. And he would have won. I would have had no hope. But it's nice to see like people respond in a healthy manner, because he was like, okay, what's going on? Like,
to ask questions first and react second.
Because he's like, this is so out of your character, and I'd known him for a couple years and told him what was going on. He's like, okay, well, we can avoid that. Yeah, because there was an event that triggered it, and it's like, we'll not do that. I'm like, cool. I didn't even think it would. I would have never been like, oh yeah, that's a triggering event, but it was, you know.
And that must be a scary thing too about like being a person living with a mental illness. Like you must feel like you're just walking in a minefield at all times.
It sometimes can definitely feel like that, especially when I was first diagnosed and trying to figure things out. Um, it felt like I just had no control of my brain. Um, I was always concerned like something might set it off, and then I just can't logically deal with myself. Um, I think now that like I've gone through the counseling I've gone through and the therapy and classes, I feel like a whole lot less like I'm walking in a minefield. And there's still occasionally mines, but I actually get to see the warning signs.
Yeah.
Like, oh, minefield ahead. Oh, okay. I can prepare myself. And how do I do that? And having those skills that I have through the classes and therapy and counseling, where, yeah, definitely the first couple years, um, I was like, what is this? What is bipolar? What is personality disorder? What's post traumatic stress? What
Oh,
happens?
especially too. Like I remember being a kid like 10 years ago. Like people threw that term around, like like candy. Like someone's acting a little peculiar. Like oh they're bipolar. Like people knew nothing about that term,
It's
and
yeah,
they toss it around a lot.
it still gets thrown around. Like I was at a party recently, um, and the person was just like, "Yeah, I had a really bipolar week," and so like I reached out to him. I was like, "Oh, sorry to hear that. How you doing?" They're like, "No, it was just like I was up and down." I was like, "Oh, so you're not diagnosed?" And people just, I don't know. People don't understand what it actually means.
I was about to say, how do you feel about people who self-diagnose?
I think it is harmful and not useful.
Yeah, because
Um, there's
like
265 diagnoses in the DSM, and there's variations of those. And DSM is Diagnostics and Statistics Manual.
I'm familiar with the DSM.
Fair. Um, but when you self-diagnose, then you self-treat, and you might not be using the right treatment. Um, and
I totally get that. Yeah,
most of the people I know who self-diagnose use it for attention. I'm not saying everyone does, but I think there's a lot larger benefit in, hey, I think something's wrong. I'm gonna go see someone
yeah.
who's
There's I definitely
gone.
know people like that. Like when when I was in college, I have like I have sleep deprivation. Like I'm an insomniac
Okay.
personally. Um, and it took me I think I went 3 full days and nights without sleep before I went to a doctor. And like that's when I kind of became a little like sensitive towards people who like call themselves insomniacs because like I would try to relate to them. I'd be like, oh, like I'm an insomniac. Like, well, what medication do you take? Like, I take this. What do you take? And they don't. Oh, nothing. I just smoke some weed before bed, and that fixes it. Like that's not how it works.
Or even if it is how it works, it's like, did you talk to a doctor about that?
Yeah. Well, even me too. Like, I suspected that I had insomnia like since I was a teenager, and like after like 7, maybe even 8 years of calling myself an insomniac before I actually went to a doctor and actually got medication for it that I take regularly. And like medication helps when you're being medicated properly. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I meds have helped save my life. Also, they suck to find the right ones, but once you find the right ones, I think they can be highly beneficial.
That yeah.
Um,
I've seen people go through several medications before finding the right one. I know people who still haven't found the right medication for them, and it shows.
well, and it shows, and it's hard, and it's like we were talking about, like you're walking through the minefields, and now you're on different set of meds, and that actually is making things worse, and
Hmm.
it feels hopeless and endless. I think I went through 5 years before I've been pretty stable on the meds I've been on, where they're
Wow.
not changing. But yeah, I think I've changed meds, dosages or meds, combos, whatever, probably close to 40 times now.
Oh my. Okay. I've been on
Um,
two different medications.
yeah, and it's just a like meds can be a great thing, but it's also such a daunting thing, right?
It really is. Like I remember when I got my first prescription, even though I had gone 3 full days and nights without sleep, like I was still nervous to take the medication, even though I knew I needed it, my doctor knew I needed it, and like I still kind of put it off a couple hours when I should have taken them.
Oh yeah. Well, and I understand that trepidation. I actually just today got a sleep aid filled. Because being bipolar, yes, things are fairly well regulated, but occasionally um, I'm more up than usual, meaning my sleep is a whole lot less than I need.
Yeah.
Like I'll sleep for 2, maybe 3 hours, and then my body's like, "Oh, we're good."
Yeah, and it's not even that you are good, it's that your body just thinks it is.
Oh yeah,
Like,
no, definitely not good. But the body's like, "We're good."
yeah.
Can do that for about 2 weeks, and then the body catches up to the reality of where it's at.
Oh yeah, that's like when I went to my first doctor, like when I went to the doctor for the first time when I knew I had a problem, like I was in a bad place. Like I do not have, well, I've never been diagnosed with depression or anything like that, but I had like sleep deprived related depression.
Depression.
And like I was
Oh,
going through like massive like canyons and valleys of like I'd be super immature for like 2 hours, I'd be a little shit, and then I'd go through like another 2 hours of just being a depressed wreck.
yeah.
And it took that to like make me want to go talk to a doctor, because like I was getting on my roommate's side bad sides very fast. I was getting on my friends' bad sides very fast. I was getting on my coworkers' bad side very fast, and then eventually I was like, okay, I got to go see a doctor.
Something needs to change.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and yeah, and it's like with that sleep aid, I've taken it before, but and every time I'm just like, do I need it? Do I need it? And it's like, no, this is actually what I need. I know it
yeah.
helps. I know it does its job.
And I've definitely seen people like that too, who they have a medication, and then the medication makes them better, and they're like, oh, I'm better. I don't need the medication anymore.
Well, that's I. The temptation for me, my meds have some pretty big side effects. So I'm like, I'm stable. I can stop taking them. If discounting the fact that the reason I'm stable is that I'm on them. And so it's like, hold on. Remember what? How did I get the
Yeah,
opportunity to be stable?
the
How did I get
medication.
exactly like how was
Yeah,
I able to go and actually participate in classes and counseling and group therapy? Medication. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's got side effects, and I wish I could do without the side effects. But on the flip side,
It's positives versus negatives, right? Like,
oh yeah,
do you prefer to be without the positives of the medication, or do you prefer to not have the negatives of the medication?
oh, and there's no contest. I prefer having the good sides, so
Yeah,
I will take the negatives. But yeah, it's always the like, oh, yep, okay, no, meds actually did help. Remember,
yeah.
can't discount that. Um, but yeah, it's a meds are an interesting one. I've seen friends get stable, go off meds, and then they're not stable anymore, and it's a
I've seen
repeated
that
cycle.
happen to many people, myself as well.
And it's like, oh, but man, yeah, and I think that in part is one of the stigmas that I hope you don't fight alone is fighting, because there's so much stigma in taking a medication.
Yeah,
Um, I've I can't count the hundreds of times that I've been told by some random person in my life that, well, if you just eat right,
yeah. If you just exercise, if you just eat right, if you just be more happier.
like I gotta go off of my allergy med because I didn't eat what I'm allergic to. You can go off your bipolar med. I'm like, mm-hmm, because those are
Absolutely.
in the same class.
But kind of in the same vein of that, this might be a little wild segue, but do you
Sure.
find that there might be a difference between like respecting a mental illness and enabling a mental illness?
Um, I do believe there is. So, like, yeah, there's definitely a difference. For me, the way that works out is the difference between help and support.
Okay.
So, because I actually had to go through this on my own, because I had people enabling me and I was asking them to enable me and didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And what they were doing is they were providing help. So, um, when I'm in the throes of mania or depression from bipolar, my executive functioning goes down. So, like executive functioning, doing the dishes, checking the mail, laundry,
Yeah.
household chores, stuff like that. And so I would ask somebody to help me, and they would come over and do laundry or do the dishes or go through the mail with me. Um, but then I would end up in square one again. I'd be like, I feel good, cool. 3 weeks later, dishes are still not done, laundry's not done, mail's back. Versus support, which I still do ask for now. I'll be like, hey, I'm struggling to like do dishes and laundry. Will you come over, hang out? I'll do the dishes and the laundry, but you're just here.
Yeah.
Um, and so people will do that. Or had a friend help me organize my place. Um, but I was like, hey, I'm struggling with this. How about I hire you? I'll do it, and you come help me do it. Versus just old, my old habits would have been, hey, just come over and do this for me.
Yeah.
And I think that, at least in my case, that's the enablement side, is when I'm asking someone to do it for me versus support me in doing it.
Okay.
uh,
I definitely see the difference. Like I understand the point you're making.
yeah.
Cuz like I've definitely like within friend groups and stuff like that, like there's definitely been some discourse in our friends group about a member of our group and the difference between enabling them and like actually helping them. And it was a sore topic for a little bit between my friend group, and none of us really knew the answer, and it kind of just ended up being a mute point. Things just kind of moved on.
Yeah.
Like nothing really came of it, either positively or negatively.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah. And I think that's the difference, is, at least for me, supporting someone in doing it versus doing it for them.
okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, do you believe that like most of the time the answer would be prescription medication, or do you believe that there are many other ways that don't have to be prescription medication?
So I think it is, having done 19 interviews now, I think there's as many ways as there's many people on this planet.
Okay.
What will help? I have the last interview we did, which is one of the guests for season 3. They don't take meds. They don't need meds. They're stable without them. They're also diagnosed bipolar, so it was fascinating to me. But like, they're still in contact with their doctor. They're still in contact, making sure that if something did come up, if mania came back and was wrecking his life,
Mm-hmm.
then they could do something from a med perspective, potentially, or check in or whatever, right? So yeah, like um, for me, my personal answer, I will be on meds for the rest of my life, but that's because I don't sleep without them and I have hallucinations without them. I don't. Going back to the earlier question, do I like the positives? Yes, I like sleep and I like
Yeah.
not hearing things. Um, they do some other stuff, but those are the major knockouts. Um, but then, yeah, talking to Blair earlier for season 3, he's not on meds and that's managed. Um, so I think it is, there's 7 point some billion people on this planet. I think there's 7.7 billion options. But going back to actually talking to professionals, talking to psychiatrists, talking to
That's like the
counselors,
main common thread. Is
yeah, get some professional help at least to start.
yeah. Is that difficult to? Because I know like a part of it is acceptance, right? Like
Yeah.
if you never thought that you might need help, do you think therapy or seeing professionals would have any impactful changes on you?
Well, I wouldn't have gone. So
Yeah,
um, if I somehow could have gotten there, I think it could have an impact. But if I don't believe I need help,
you're not
I'm
going to
not
look
going to
for it.
seek help.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and I think that's the side of it is it there, like you said, the acceptance. You have to accept that you need help. The first step to fixing a problem is admitting there's a problem.
yeah. Do you find that difficult? And do you find sometimes maybe that sways back and forth?
um, for me, I think I had the inverse problem personally. I found that I wanted to attribute a lot of things like, oh, well, that's a problem. This is a problem. It's like, no, that's just something you need to deal with.
Hmm.
Versus, it's just, versus, yeah, no, that is mania or that is XYZ. Um, and at this point in my journey, I'm just very forthcoming with my doctors. Well, that's why, like, I got the sleep aid prescribed and that I
Yeah,
picked up today because I
I'm
talked to my.
definitely a believer in that. Like the one person you should never lie to is your doctor. Like the doctor should be your doctor should be the one person that you should be willing to tell everything about yourself to.
Oh, yeah. And I think finding the right doctor and finding the right counselors make that easy. But counselors and doctors, for the vast majority of them, are in it because they want to see people do better. They want to help people do better. They want to provide solutions. And yeah, if you can be honest with them, then things can get better. If you keep stuff, like if you hide stuff or don't talk about it, maybe not going to get better.
Yeah, well, they can't help you with a problem that they don't know exists.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Like they can't read your mind. They can't tell you um that things, yeah, they can't. If I didn't tell my doctor that I wasn't sleeping very, or that I was sleeping for 3 hours and waking up ready to go with my day, he wouldn't have known that's where I was at.
Yeah.
So yeah, like opening up and talking to my doctors, I don't find hard, but I do know like a fair number of the guests that I've had on do find it hard. Um, for me, I guess it's always been, well, okay, I want to improve something, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to talk to the person about that.
Do you find it more difficult to reach out to your doctor first, or say your close friends and family and stuff? Like who do you like in the beginning stages of realizing you have a problem? Like who would be more difficult to open up to?
I think the beginning stages for me, it was more difficult to open up to a doctor because finding one,
Yeah.
like I struggled to find one, and then once I found one, the first one wasn't great. Um, so I could like talk to my friends about it, but I was like, well, Doctor So and So doesn't seem to care. Um, yeah, so I think beginning stages it can be a little more difficult to open up to a doctor, open up to a care person
Yeah.
because you don't know them and they don't know you. Um, and then a note there: if you're not getting along with your doctor or your staff, look for another one. They
Yeah.
should they should care about you. They should listen to you. If they're not listening to what you're saying, they're not doing their job.
Well, I definitely felt that way when I first went to a doctor for my sleeping medication, because I think throughout the entire sit down, he I think he only asked me two questions. Like he came in and he's like, "What's up?" And I told him like, "Well, I haven't slept the last 3 days. I'm having auditory hallucinations. I'm going through like massive peaks of immaturity and depression." And he just went, "Do you want something addictive or non-addictive?" And I went, "Yeah." I went, "Non-addictive, preferably." And he went, "Okay, here." And like he gave me a prescription, and it did work. Thank God, still does work. But like that was the entire interaction. And I think if I was in a situation where I would have to see that doctor more regularly, I probably would end up shopping around more for different doctors.
Oh yeah, because it's like, oh, thanks. That's what you care about. Okay.
Yeah. Like, I think I just kind of excuse it as like, oh, he's just making sure, like, I'm not just looking for drugs or so. I thought it was just him being careful, like trying to see if I'm bluffing or not.
Yeah.
But
Who
like,
knows?
yeah, and definitely like when I had to get my prescription renewed and stuff like that, like he would just look at me and just sign it like, okay, bye. Like he never like asked me follow up questions. He never asked me if it was working or not. Like he
Oh
just went, oh,
man.
prescription renewal, okay, here, and then he sent me on my way.
Yeah.
And I had to see, I had to, every 3 months. Yeah, I think it was every 3 months I had to renew my prescription. And yeah, it was just like a renewal. Okay, sign the piece of paper and send me on my way. I don't think he asked me any follow up questions. The entirety I was going to him, and then now I've moved to a different city there, so I'm dealing with a different doctor. I just got the prescription moved over, and like they seem actually more engaged.
Yeah, I definitely have had that feeling. Um, yeah, because I said I'm close to 40, I think, changes in my meds over the last 10 years, whether dosage or different med or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, had one med that was causing muscle twitching,
Oh,
which wasn't great. But talking to the doctor about it, he's like, oh, okay, well, it's still like the best option for you, so maybe we should stay on it. And I was like, no. Um, like having to fight him a little bit. Like it did get changed, but it's like I shouldn't have to fight.
yeah,
Like there's some side effects where, like we were talking about, yes, I'd rather have the side effects that I have than auditory hallucinations and sleeping. But muscle twitching is one where no, I'd rather have the lack of sleep than twitches. But yeah,
and
it's
for others, they might not care. Like they're like, yeah, I don't care if I'm twitching a little bit. I'd rather just sleep, right?
yeah, and that's also the thing. Like, and how severe is it? But though, like he didn't, like you were saying, no follow up questions. Like he didn't ask how severe it was or anything. He's just like, oh, okay, well, it's still your best option.
Yeah,
And I'm like, well, how do you know? And I don't think it is.
yeah. Because like when I switched doctors, like she asked me a bunch of follow up questions, and like that's how I found out I needed a stronger dosage. Because like I was telling her how it was working, and I was telling her, you know, it usually kicks in around this time if I take it at this time, and this is how I feel the next morning. And she went like, "Oh, that's not how that drug's supposed to work at all. You need a stronger dosage." And I went, "Oh, okay." And yeah, since then it's been working even better.
Yep, and that's the thing. Like a checked out doctor versus a doctor who's like, oh no, I'm in this to help people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's interesting. Do you ever feel that there might be like a competition between yourself and people with the same diagnoses, or do you feel it's more you're all in this together? Or like do you find yourself often getting jealous or feeling better if you're doing better than someone with the same diagnoses?
For me, no. Like I have with a number of people who I'm close with who have bipolar as well. We'll joke with each other like, "Oh man, I haven't slept in." Oh well, I haven't slept in one
Yeah,
day past that. Like a joking competition, but it's a way to make light and kind of make fun of. Well, we're all experiencing similar,
to keep the dialogue going.
yeah, similar things, and this is kind of just funny. But I don't think like I've never experienced a competition to be like, well, I'm worse off than you, or you're worse off than me.
Or even in the reverse, like if you see someone with the same diagnoses as you and you see that you're handling it better than them, does that give you like a confidence boost, or do you feel more like you need to help them?
Um, for me, I want to see people succeed.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't have started your podcast if that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and I think so. Like when I see somebody, um, I just ask them what they need. Like if I'm gonna know them and get to know them,
Hmm.
and how can I help? Um, yeah, like I think for me, it doesn't necessarily give me a confidence boost, but it's something I wanted to see a decade ago. So like I had this conversation a lot with my doctors. I was like, "Can I talk to somebody who's bipolar?" Oh, nope. Okay. Can I talk to somebody who has PTSD? Nope. Can I talk to somebody with dependent personality disorder? And the answer to all of those was no, because in the U.S. there's a law called HIPAA, which is forgetting what the acronym stands for, but it's a patient privacy.
Yeah.
Um,
They
which I
can't
know
give you the
Canada
information of other.
exactly like
Yeah.
you can't get that info, and I think that's a great thing. But yeah, I feel there's a lot of camaraderie of like, oh, you have bipolar, I have bipolar, or even people of not same diagnoses, but yeah, I have a mental illness, you have a mental illness. Um, so yeah, when I've had it worse, not really a competition, and when I'm doing better, not a competition either. Just hey, I've been where you're at. Like 95% of the time, I've been where that person's at least in my
Mm-hmm.
experience, and 95% of their time they've been where I've been. So, um, I think it's how do we be brothers and sisters because we're everybody's doing a hard battle.
Yeah,
It's not easy,
absolutely.
and yeah, so I think that's where that comes from. Wanting to be an encouragement, be a help if I can be a help, and just have things be chill, I guess, be okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, I want to see people succeed, so I hope that people can succeed, and if I can in any way be a part of that, cool. If not, cool too. But yeah, just really hoping people succeed is what I go for, I guess.
Well, that's a noble cause. I'm a. This might be a little redundant, but have you seen any results in your work? Have you
I
what it like
have.
any growth with you or with the people you've had on or with your the community you've built?
Yeah, so I have. So it's since it's a 501c3, which in the US is a tax exempt organization, I have a board and I report to my board. Um, but when I founded it and we had our first board meeting in April of last year, and we're starting things going from an organizational perspective, I had said to them, and like it's in what I wrote out, I was like, if I could change one person's life, don't know if I will, but that's why I'm doing it. I'm hoping it will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've had in person two people tell me it's changed their life, which I cried both times. Happy
Well, that
tears,
must feel
but
good,
like
right?
it's crazy to think to me to like my small podcast and organization that's trying to do some other stuff too is like making a difference.
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine come up and talk to me, and he's like, "Hey, I listened to this episode, and it's changed the way I'm talking to my doctors or my daughters about sadness. They're 4 years and 6 years old." He's like, "Because I just want them to know it's okay to be sad." And I'm like, "Yes, please do. Like, change that generational conversation."
Oh yeah.
Like
Like
I opened up right at the beginning. I learned that my family has a history of mental illness by being in an ICU bed.
that can't be a good way to find out.
It's
Like
not sustainable.
no. Like just that's just them not trying to insinuate anything about your family, but to sit there and be like, well, maybe we'll just take our chances and like maybe this bomb won't explode. And if it does, we'll handle it then.
And I think that was kind of it. Like there's so much shame. There's so much shame in the US around mental health. And my parents fell into that
Yeah.
where no, you can't be mentally ill, you can't have mental health conditions. That's shameful. And in reality, it's in the US, 20% of people, 1 in 5 people, have a diagnosable,
Oh yeah.
treatable mental health
And
condition. So it's not an insignificant amount of folks.
like an interesting like statistic between Canada and America that kind of shows that is Canada on paper has a higher mental illness rate than the USA. However, the USA has a higher suicide rate.
Yep.
And that definitely comes from it's not that there's less people in the US who don't have a mental illness, it's just there's less people reporting it, there's less people talking about it, there's less people on paper doing something about it.
Well, yeah.
And like whereas, in Canada it's a lot more open, like there's not as much judgment on it as from what I've seen. There's more of judgment on how to handle it than actually having it. Like I've more arguments that I've seen personally about mental illness is about treatment. It's never really about
Can
whether or
you
not
have
it.
it or not?
Yeah. And I definitely think that like because a lot of people are at least willing to talk about it more, a lot more people are willing to talk to their doctors about it more, and like that's why at least on paper it shows that Canada has more mental illness than the USA. But I like if you were to ask me, I'd say it's probably the same.
I would
Well,
think it's
maybe
probably similar. Like it might be a little higher um,
just due to population.
uh, population and isolation and cold weather can have been proven to contribute to depression.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm
And
from the north, man. I've seen it.
well, and that's the thing. It's like Canada is much further north and gets a lot more snow, so it's more isolated and colder. So
Oh yeah, especially like I'm from a small town myself too, and like I know it does go hand in hand, but like where I'm from, like there's a massive like drug abuse problem. Like it is everywhere in my hometown. Like I've seen it. Like I think as early as I think grade 7, I saw my peers getting into drugs, like hard drugs, like pills and stuff.
oof.
Yeah, like again, I've lost a couple friends, like both physically and like metaphorically, like people that I had to cut out of my life and people who had to make a quick exit out of my life.
Yeah.
And like I at least then I never really considered it was the fact of like our surroundings. I just thought it was like, well, like they're just dumb. Like but like that's the mind of a child, right? And like as you grow, you have to broaden your own horizons and you have to find information and you have to base your opinion off of what you know, right? And when you're young, you don't know, but as you get older, like I think it becomes more of a responsibility to learn more.
I would agree with that. We have the ability to understand a lot more as adults, so I think striving to understand. Um, I think one of the biggest impacts for me about dealing with other folks growing up was realizing everybody's going through their own shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I have my stuff and my story's hard, but their story can be hard too. So, oops, they cut me off today. So what? Or they were rude, or they did XYZ, looking at it from their story. Well, what's going on? Do they
Yeah.
have a sick kid at home that they're trying to get back to, and that's why they cut me in line, and they're trying to. It, I don't know, right? So yeah, trying to understand, like why we can learn. Most people will talk to you about it if you're like, hey, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
What was going on? Um,
And like that mindset can apply in almost anywhere that you can apply that logic in terms of religion, in terms of politics, in terms of health, like any like name a thing that logic applies.
oh yeah, very true.
Yeah. And how do you feel about? I'm just gonna because at least in my life I hear this get brought up a lot. Like, do you feel like marijuana has benefits to mental illness, or do you feel like it's more of a hazard?
I think that is one to talk to your doctor about,
Yeah.
um, because I think it can be both.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I've seen it genuinely help people, and I've seen it like tear some people down.
well, and I think that's the thing. It can help and it can hinder. And
Yeah,
it's definitely one to like go into with your eyes open and talk to your treatment team. Um, because in the U.S. from Colorado, medical marijuana is legal. I know Canada just legalized it.
yeah,
Um, countrywide. So I think it's a talk to your doctor about it because it does have like um, can have some very large positives. I've met some people with anxiety where um, anti-anxiety pills didn't really help when they were having a panic attack, but if they use a little bit of marijuana, they can
it
resolve
does
their
the
panic
trick.
attack.
Yeah,
But that was they determined that with their doctor, right? It's
yeah,
going back
which
to
a
talk to
lot
the
of people don't do
professional.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, I'm a professional in a few things, and when something's out of my wheelhouse, I go talk to people because people come to talk to me. I'm like, wait, yeah, I'm a professional software engineer, right? So I know how to do that stuff, but I couldn't build a plane, so I wouldn't try to build a plane if I needed one. I would talk to an aerospace engineer and be like, hey, I need a plane.
What do you do
Uh,
with that with software design? Did you say software design or
engineer,
engineer? Engineer?
engineer.
What does
Yeah.
that entail?
Um, Currently, my position is I am a tier three support engineer. So I deal with tier three tickets. So they've gone through generally two other people before it gets to me,
Hmm.
and do emergency bug fix development.
Emergency bug fix, like for computers and whatnot. Like,
Yeah, for the software. So say something's installed in it. If it's an EBF, something's installed in production, um, getting used, and they come up on something and it just doesn't work.
hmm
For instance, this happened with one of our clients. They upgraded their systems to our most recent release, and they couldn't open 130,000 documents anymore.
oh my, that would be scary. That would.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, well, we need to open these documents. We're like, yep, that makes sense. So
They're
yeah,
not there
that
for
was
decoration.
exactly. So that was one of the, oh, okay, well, we got to fix that. What happened? What went wrong? So the support stuff for me was figuring out what happened, what went wrong. Is it our software? Is it their stuff? Turned out, no, it was our software. We messed up. So then I developed a fix for that. So that's the thing. Like dealing with the tier three support tickets where people log that issue. For instance, that client logged the issue, can't open 130,000 documents. Oh, okay. So then figuring out what happened, which was we got rid of a code path that we thought wasn't needed. Turns out it was. And then designing and fixing a solution for them. But a lot of the tickets that come in provide a workaround instead of developing a solution.
Yeah.
In that case, there was no workaround. So that's why they got an emergency bug fix because it's an emergency.
Yeah,
And
especially like depending on the company, like those files could be
oh yeah,
like life or death.
and in this case, like thankfully they weren't. But we do government software, and occasionally like it could be.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, getting somebody in because an EBF is when no workaround exists or the workaround is onerous to a fault. So
Hmm.
something like can't even remember what it was, but you used to be able to do something. You upgrade, they upgraded the client upgraded. You could no longer do it, but you could spend like 20 minutes and do it. But it used to take a click. So we got an emergency bug fix for them because it was like, well, went from being one click to taking 20 minutes. It's not great.
Yeah, and kind of steering the conversation in a different way. We got about 15 minutes left on the podcast. Just like what do you do in your free time? Like when you're not doing the
Yeah,
coding or the heavy stuff.
fair. Um, Also, did you want to do the ad read or did you?
Oh, I'll add that in post. I'll
Okay, that works. Cool. Yeah. So, what do I do in my spare time? I am a huge nerd.
oh, thank God. In what terms? Are you like a
uh,
manga anime or like a comic book kind of
uh,
guy?
Neither fantasy D&D, I guess,
Okay.
is probably the best way I can describe it.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
I briefly had a stint where I played Dungeons and Dragons when I was in college, and
Fair.
that's about it. Like I played it for like a good 4 months of my life. It was very enjoyable. Like I loved it.
Why not get back into it?
I've been some of my friends actually here where I'm currently living. We've been talking about it. We've been like playing around with the idea for a couple months now. Haven't really gotten into it. There's only one of us that actually knows what they're doing, so like they have to like make the campaign.
Well, in that case, then pull up the D&D starter kit. It's all for you. It's all to get
Yeah.
you going. Yeah, so like D&D fantasy, like right now on my coffee table, I have the first four books of the Wheel of Time series because I'm rereading that,
Oh my.
which is Robert Jordan's series finished by Brandon Sanderson. It just got picked up uh, to be a web series.
Oh,
or
that's
a
cool.
TV series. So I was like, well, before that happens, I should at least
Brush
read the
up on
source
it so you can
material.
see the Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I play board games all across the spectrum. Like I have one game that's like an 8 minute round, and I have another game that's like a 3 hour playthrough.
Oh yeah, like again, I know that there's different ways to play D. What I played was like a super long camp. Like we played for like 3 or 4 months, and it was all the same campaign. Like it was one of
Nice.
those super long extended ones. I don't know the terminology that well. I was just there for the ride.
Fair. Yeah, that's also like yeah, D&D. I play in campaigns occasionally. Um, just competition. I like friendly competition.
Yeah,
I don't really like it when there's stuff on the line, but when it's like who won this game?
yeah. I was about to say because like I definitely played with an interesting mix of people. Like when you play D&D, typically, like are you in it, or you're just like there to like shit disturb and like just try to make it like the funniest game possible, or are you like playing it for serious?
I play it as my character. Like I tend to role play. I really like the
Yeah,
role playing aspect of it. So, and I've had characters from the hulking orc who's not very intelligent but is really witty and charismatic.
yeah,
So like playing him was a lot of fun. Where like everybody liked him, but also they're like, man, he's not that bright.
yeah.
Uh,
I played with a guy who had a character like that. He had like an orc or an ogre, or like one of the buffoonish characters, and
yeah.
like his language skills were super low, but he made him not his politics, but like his charisma. Like he put all his stats in like charisma and like getting people to like him, and like he had like zero language skills. Like I think the whole joke was like he only knew how to say his own name, but like he could like talk to dragons and stuff by only saying his own name.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like playing like that. My first ever D&D character was a rogue who was hyper intelligent but really unwise. Like I think I had a -2 or a -3 to wisdom, and so um, during that campaign, we were in the capital city, and there was a really cool jeweled dagger, and I knew I had the skills to steal it. And again, my guy's really unwise, so he's like, "I'm gonna steal it." So he managed to successfully steal the dagger and get my friends arrested, but I got away.
That's funny.
Um, so then I had to get them out of prison.
Yeah,
So stuff like that.
I
Like,
think like the only silliest thing I ever did was one of my friends, he was playing as the class there where you can transform into animals.
okay,
Uh,
druid, yeah.
a druid, yeah. He turned himself into a snake, and then like I rolled like a nat 1 in strength, and I accidentally like threw him into a zombie horde because
Oops.
like I was trying to throw the snake over a clearing, and then I rolled a nat 1, and it just yeah, I basically killed him. And like the thing, I asked to do it too without even consulting him. I was just like, I throw the snake, and he was like, "What?" I was like, "I throw the snake across the cavern."
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, and I think that's one of the things I love about D&D. You can take it so many directions. I like role playing, so whatever my character stats are, actually going with that.
hmm
Um, yeah, like my
like
most recent
actually
character.
making decisions based on your stats instead of like genuinely just trying to gamble it and doing what you want.
Yeah, like trying to make decisions on stats and what would my character actually do, and try to like act it out and figure it out. And yeah, like my most recent person is a spy character who's just very quiet and behind the scenes. But like I've got something worked out with the DM where like occasionally I just get money, and
Like
everybody else is like, why? What just happened?
penny stocks.
Well, like I run a spy ring in an intelligence service, kind
That's
of
funny. I
behind the
played
scenes.
I played I think like a 14-year-old like battle master or something like that. So like I played like this super like ready to fight but like naively young kind of character. So like I was able to like just make like stupid snap decisions, like
Nice.
throw the snake.
Throw a snake. Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I love stuff like that. It's just it adds a lot of fun. It adds variety. Um, And taking D&D too seriously to me just makes it unfun.
There was one person in our party who took it very seriously to the point where like I think she had to like remove herself for a little bit so she could calm down.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she was I think she was like the only good leaning person, and everyone else was either like neutral or evil. So like her
Oh,
vote for anything never counted, and it stressed her out.
fair. Yeah, I'm there to have fun when I'm playing D&D.
Yeah,
Like games I play to have fun. Like winning is secondary, so like I won't handicap myself and like play unintelligently, but my goal with the game is fun and then winning.
yeah.
Like winning is not first. So,
I didn't even know you could like win D&D. Like I thought it was just like a campaign that never ended, and you just basically play this unending story.
well, and I think D&D there's not necessarily a win per se,
You
but
can definitely lose though if everyone dies.
oh, you can lose. But like I've played D&D in the past with people who just min-maxed, which is like stat packing and well, if I hit this way and do these next 40 moves, then XYZ happens. And for me, I'm just like, what would be fun right now?
Yeah, like that sounds like a headache. Like unless I don't know, like is there like a professional like D&D like league? Like is there like
there's what are they? I think they're called adventure leagues. They're not professional, but they go around to gaming conventions
Mhm.
and set tables up. And if you are part of them, you can bring your own character sheet and play.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
and so like you're with a different cast of characters, but going through that. So I think that'd be as close to a professional D&D
Yeah, because
league.
like besides like unless like people can actually pay or like get like win money or like actual tournaments or like actual competitions, like I don't see the point of like taking it to that level of seriousness. Like unless you're in like some kind of like if unless it's like a profession.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing for me. Like it's definitely just for fun.
Hmm.
A couple of my friends who I play with currently like do min max, but it's just they've been playing for so long. It's they don't think about it, and I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, if you don't have to think about it, sure.
yeah. But if you gotta like bust out a notebook and like strategize and write all these notes,
Oh yeah. Um, but because they know things well, we did a one shot, which was fun. Which I guess you can win those because you either succeed in the one shot or you die in the one shot.
yeah.
Um, but because they knew what they could do, like when we got to the end where we, well, not the end, but halfway point where we needed to get intelligence and stop this caster in the middle of a defended camp, they both realized that the camp was, or that the tower was wooden, and that if they both cast a certain spell, they would destroy the tower, and the caster would fall 60 feet.
Hmm.
And so they did that, and the caster died, and we stopped the caster, and we didn't have to face any other enemies.
It's like a speed
And
running for D&D.
yeah, the GM's looking at us like, well, that worked.
That's funny.
We achieved our goal. It was supposed to be a huge battle, and it ended up just being, ah, we sneak in, we cast this, we sneak out,
Yeah.
bye. So
Oh,
it can be fun.
all right. Well, I think I'm going to end the episode here.
Perfect.
Um, uh, Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Keaton, for coming on. If anyone listening is interested in listening to Keaton's podcast, it is called You Don't Fight Alone, and I will leave it in the description down below. Um, uh, yeah, thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we'll see you later.